Yo, one of the Proverbs said that the foolish mock at sin. You know what I mean? Man. I was watching still and the thought crossed my mind about the antennas and stuff and how the human body generates a little bit of electric and there's chemicals and all that kind of stuff that work your synapses and everything for your brain to operate, and then the optic nerve in your eye going to your spine, and we got gut feelings. There's a lot of that, that's all connected, and then the whole nervous system, right? So when we think about these grounding blankets and other things, what if getting into the position of prayer is an alignment that you're humbling yourself and everything, but you're also getting down to earth. You're also grounding. If you're outside, and then earlier I was thinking about being dirt floor poor back in the day, and how much healthier those people are. And it's because they were grounding and they were humble. So if I exalt God to the position of most high, and I consider him the creator of everything, I'm actually lining up with evidence. It's not hard to believe at all, actually, because obviously some entity created everything. I mean, where did it come from? Did you get that answer? Well, where did that come from? Did you get that answer? Or repeat the process infinitely. You could have these different theories and stuff, and then you find out that the Big Bang is a theory, not a fact, a theory that comes from a theoretical physicist. That means this dude is making up stuff for a living. That's what that means. A theoretical physicist is somebody that is well versed in evidence, jumping to conclusions, making assumptions. And everybody knows that when you make an assumption, you're making an ass out of you and me. That's why it's ass, you, me. Assume. Anyway, and the Proverbs are wisdom, and there's 31 Proverbs, so one a day. Take it like medicine. You know what I mean? Pray for wisdom, pray for mercy, pray for peace. Have a discipline in those prayers. Very, very critical. Okay, so I was thinking, so what if the human body and the nervous system, and we generate electric and all this kind of stuff, what if we got into position the same way that we dial in a radio? You know what I mean? So for your car to start, you got to have a negative ground, and you got to have the positive on the battery, and that's got to make the circuit connection through the switch and everything to start the car. You know what I mean? So what if this helps your prayer? In the attempt to become a receiver, in the NFL, you're going to put yourself in a lot of different positions. While you're going to run, you're going to trade, and all this stuff. And then in that moment, that the ball's there. So timing's a big deal to catch the ball. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to catch these blessings. I need to start a whole channel called I'm Trying to Catch These Blessings. Because I'm trying to catch these blessings, y'all. I'm telling you straight up. Okay, so I just drive around just bored thinking about this stuff. Way back in the day, I used to smoke marijuana. I don't know more. But then there's a channel I call the Why Files. I just watched a deal with the Smithsonian's covering up the Egyptians in the Grand Canyon or whatever, you know what I mean? And some of the Native Americans. And of course, I grew up in Oklahoma at the Tahlequah's end of the Trail of Tears for the Cherokee. I was just right up the road from there, and I grew up about like that kid from where the red fern grows, right? And I remember I literally told my dad, I said, hey, Dad, I need some shoes for school because I had no shoes. And he said, you don't need shoes, you need a job. And he walked over and got in a semi-truck and drove off. I didn't see him for like, I think it was like 2 or 3 months. I know that he showed back up about the time I was going to school, and by then I'd been working and had shoes and everything because mowing grass. And that turned into cutting wood all winter. And yeah, so that was real good. Anyway, recently I was on a channel. It's like a $5 paywall, and they have this men's group, right? And because my wife's nagging me, she's like, you know, you need friends or whatever. You know what I mean? I'm just like, whatever. You know what I mean? And then because my job and everything, like, you know, who has time for all that? And I'm like, never in the same place for 4 days. You know what I mean? If I get off of work, you know, I got property in multiple states, so it's like, just to keep the grass mowed is, you know, a thing. And very busy, very, very busy. We all are. Anyway, so going in and doing it and doing it and going in and doing it. I see this dude, and he did basically a gratitude journal where he writes down, you know, I call it the Great 8. Because if you can't come up with 8 things you're grateful for, then you're not trying. You know what I mean? But more than 8, it's not as focused as I like. So I call it the Great 8, and I try to do, and it rhymes. I can remember stuff. It's gotta have a catch. It's got to stick in my head. And the rhymes and stuff, you know, I got to Piper myself into righteousness when I find something good, you know what I mean? So, and there's stuff like right now, you know, it's like I'm driving at night because that's the requirements of the load. So, you know, what am I going to do? Stay up and drive a semi-truck all night long, you know, watch, you know, some white files, you know. It just plays right through the headset, you know what I mean? So I can just hear it, you know, I'm just driving and everything. And there's podcasts and stuff, like my phone has the picture-in-picture thing. So like right now, if I glance down, I'm seeing the Google Maps. It's got the little blue line. And it'll turn red and stuff, and it'll give me notifications if there's like a wreck up ahead and stuff like that. You know what I mean? So like, literally right now, I can't see whatever this looks like. You know what I mean? I watch it later on, I'm like, oh man, I look like an idiot. You know what I mean? And that happens a lot. And I learned from it, and I learned to, you know, improve my behavior. But at the same time, I'm just keeping it real, you know what I mean? And I have like, I actually don't want pride because pride comes before destruction. So I just want to make sure to lift up the Bible at all times because, you know, you got humble, humiliated, and humor. There's like a root in the where you know, you go through these tragedies and stuff like that or whatever, and like one time I got bit in the ass by a dog and it ripped my whole britches out, right? So that's embarrassing to walk around with a, you know, ripped out britches and the chunk of your ass missing. You know what I mean? A lot of people would look at that. When it happened to me, I felt the humiliation. But what are you going to do? You're like, well, you know, I guess you caught me with my pants down or whatever and make a joke. That's where the humor comes in. And like right now, I'm just thinking about it and talking about it or whatever. it doesn't bother me no more. But at the time, it's painful. And then like dog slobber is bad for wounds, so you really want to clean that out immediately. And then like you got to get healed up and everything. And then if you drive for a living, sitting in a chair and a dog has been a chunk out of the cheek of your ass, there's some pain involved. You know what I mean? So it's a real pain in the ass. So it'll humble you. You see what I'm saying? So humiliation, humble, and humor. You might as well just make peace with that. And I hope what I'm trying to convey is coming across in a manner that's not condescending or uppity or whatever. You know what I mean? Like I don't explain stuff to a small level because I think that I'm smarter than anybody. I do that because that's how I learn. I learned more in my life trying to explain it to somebody else. And then with the YouTube thing, I don't know who I'm talking to. You know what I mean? I could be talking to, myself, and nobody's going to watch this. I could be, speaking to thousands of people unbeknownst to me from all walks of life, all age and stage, all creed and color. You see what I'm saying? Which just amazes me or whatever, you know what I mean? And I don't want to leave nobody out because my goal is to encourage people to read the Bible for yourself. You know what I mean? That's like the goal. The goal. Read the Bible, follow the evidence. You know what I mean? And just because, the Bible calls it Noah's flood, different regions of the world talk about the worldwide flood. Like there was a flood because there's evidence of a flood literally everywhere around the world, in every nation, in every folklore, and all this different kind of stuff. And then, of course, people exaggerate. The story changes hands. You got that game of telephone where you say something to your buddy, and by the time it goes around the circle, it's totally different or whatever. But there's an underlying theme. You know what I mean? So if I read this, read that, read this, read that, and everything says flood, and there's, the nuance is different, every one of them. But it's pretty safe to say there was a flood, you know what I mean? So, it's kind of theory, getting back to our theoretical physicist, you know what I mean? So, that brings us to, is the evidence credible? How did we get this evidence? You know what I mean? Like, how did we date this rock? You know what I mean? If I send in a turtle shell, if I find a dead turtle, and I cut each shell into 5 pieces, and I send it to 5 different laboratories and say, how old is this turtle shell? And I get back 5 answers, none of them match, and some of them are millions of years different. And each accredited university swears by their findings. The process is inaccurate, is my determination from the evidence, because I found a dead turtle and I cut it into 5 pieces and sent it off, and this is the results I got back. And radiocarbon dating is making the assumption that the atmospheric conditions have been stagnant and the same throughout all time, which, the radio half-life of, deteriorating radioactive material will change under different atmospheric conditions. Like how fast is this candle burning in a hurricane? How fast is this candle burning on a regular day? How did this candle light on fire? Who made the candle? You walk in a room, there's a candlestick, and it's sitting there, it's half burnt. It's not burning currently. How tall was it when somebody lit it on fire? And who was the somebody that lit it on fire? You know what I mean? Like, who created this? probably the candlestick maker. You know, the butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker. Those were all individuals. So they had different jobs. They created different stuff. They got their name because of what they did. So based on their attributes, they were named. And then with reps and sets, they became an authority on the subject. So their position, their authority, and their attribute is all wrapped up in their name. So when I pray in the name of Jesus, amen, you know what I mean? I'm not just saying that his name is Jesus, which is actually Yeshua, which actually translates to Joshua. Right? So, in the name of Joshua sounds odd because I'm used to saying and hearing Jesus. You know what I mean? Anyway, so in the same way that we see European names like Johnson, you know, that'd be the son of John. You know what I mean? We can look back to the evidence, you know, their pagan ways was Zeus. So they were calling him the son of Zeus. So somebody that knew the Bible was trying to explain to somebody that knew pagan stuff, and the way that they conveyed that with the current culture of that day, it became Jesus, son of Zeus. You know what I mean? Son of Zeus. Like Zeus was the Most High, who's his kid. You know what I mean? And that's how they conveyed it. And then, but somebody took it as the gospel the same way somebody took the flood of Noah, and in a different culture, it came out, you know, the flood of whatever. You know what I mean? Like, but everybody knows there was a flood. Everybody knows there was a creator that had a son. You know what I mean? The only begotten son. You know what I mean? And then there's the representation that Jesus made of the attributes of God. And with reps and sets, he became an authority in the matter. With the Holy Ghost, there's all this other authority and stuff that's given that you can't earn, but you sure enough can earn the knowledge of God through wisdom, study, reps and sets, practice, time. Help me, Lord. Experience, you know, trying to convey this stuff to the public of my current culture is how I have the ability to try to make the attempt to convey. Am I turning into a radio antenna when I kneel to pray somehow? You know what I mean? And I call this stumbling into righteousness, you know what I mean? And I don't know how much of this is just, you know, thinking, and how much of this is given knowledge via the Holy Ghost. Because sometimes I'll say something to somebody and I don't know from Adam, and I'll end up telling them stuff about themselves and I don't know them, and I'm not thinking that. I'll have a different thought, but the words coming out of my mouth, me and the individuals both hearing them together for the first time. And based on the evidence of their reaction, you know, I don't like trying to get up in somebody's business. You know what I mean? Based on the reaction, they seem astounded on a regular basis. Okay. Now, when I was locked up in the Hooscow, I was like, "Don't tell me what you did. Like I don't care. I don't want to know. I'm not supposed to judge you. You know what I mean?" So you know, don't come over here and act like, oh yeah, I'm tough. You know, I was super gangster. You know, I murdered 33 people. You know, I crossed their name out on my block and all this kind of stuff. Whatever. You know what I mean? I ain't trying to hear all that. I don't want to know that. I don't respect murder. I'm going to assume that you are a human being. Therefore, I will give you dignity based on the fact that you're created in the image of God. Now, the image of God, they might not necessarily be your carcass. That's the reason why it doesn't matter what race, creed, color, or gender you are. With the image of God is your spirit. You are a spirit in a body. Like right now, I am a person driving a Kenworth truck. When I get home, I will be driving a Ram pickup, or a Subaru, or a Ford pickup, or a Chevy pickup, or a freaking Toro mower, whatever. You know what I mean? These are all different vehicles that I can drive. You know what I mean? And then you got vehicles like you might put your assets in a portfolio, in a management, and that be placed in a blood trust, or a living trust, or a revocable family trust that can transfer and be nullified upon your passing. Blah, blah, blah. Vehicle. Okay? So all this vehicle, this carcass is a vehicle. This is my earth suit, so that my spirit can walk about in the earth, being the hands and feet of the Most High. And you are too. But you have the choice of what is your Most High. What's your God? Who's your daddy? You know what I mean? That's why Jesus is like, you're of your father, the devil. He was the father of lies. That's why you're lying. He was he's been a murderer from the beginning. You know what I mean? If that's who you choose to raise up or whatever else like that, and then I'm sitting here next to you, whatever, and somehow our paths cross, and I know it's God's will that none shall perish, I have to respect the dignity and on the strength of who my Most High is, on the strength of whose I am, whom I belong to. I'm supposed to be a soldier. You know what I mean? So you get this gang mentality wrapped around your religion. You know what I mean? So step out of the religion and step into reality. Okay, Jesus is a shot caller of my gang, and I know He don't want you to go to hell, and He died to cover the fact you're some kind of murdering, lying, thieving slave to sin, and I'm supposed to help you get over it. Well, if that's my goal, I'm way better off and a lot more neutral and able to help you if I don't know what your sin is. So when I'm in jail, like, we're all in jail. You know, everybody's aware that we have sinned. So it's real easy to make that admission. Out here in the free world, people are like, oh, well, I'm better than so-and-so and blah, blah. Well, yeah, I did, X, Y, Z, but I'm not as bad as Hitler or something. You know what I mean? I'm not as bad as, insert horrific example. You know what I mean? And then get all uppity, all churched up because you provide for your kids or something. Like the basic, like the bare minimum stuff you're supposed to do. It's just like, okay, it's like, what I mean? Do you throw a parade because your kids clean their room and wash the dishes? No. You're supposed to clean your room and wash your dishes. Like, because you did that, you get to go play. You know what I mean? Versus, some leather treatments and get back in there and get it done. Because I said I'm the parent. You know what I mean? Discipline. You know what I mean? And to whatever degree necessary, in a loving manner, with humor. You know what I'm saying? So, like, it all ties together. It all ties together. And these are great, wonderful things, right? So I'm just sitting there thinking about, I watch this deal, and this guy made his gratitude list. I think he does 10 things. I say grade 8 because, I already said mine. But he got down on his knees, and this guy is given to pride, very squared away. If I lived as dedicated and squared away life as he does, I would probably be proud of it. I ain't even gonna lie. I would be proud of it. You know what I mean? I've been blessed with a lack of discipline. you know, be cursed and blessed. You know, the humility comes real easy for me. And the humor that goes along with it. Because, you know, I just feel like I'm just like clinging by a thread and it keeps working. You know what I mean? Like there's no doubt. Anybody that looks at my life, there's no doubt that God is a giant necessity. You know what I mean? Like I don't like put on airs and all kinds of stuff like that. Like I desperately need God in my life, for real, and that's why it's, you know, easy for me to give Him all the glory, and I'm just trying to be about His business because I think about, you know, well, when I die, I'm going to pay my sin debt. I don't want to go to hell. That's a thought, right? But that's like some way off yonder that don't click. You know what I'm saying? But like, you know, I'm in freaking Virginia. You know, who's keeping somebody from kicking the door open and, you know, having their way with my family while I'm gone? God. So I'm going to be about His family while I'm out here, knowing that He'll return the favor type of deal, right? That's like my thought pattern, and that's something right here and now. I'm going to be about His business and His family, and He's going to be about my business and my family, and I'm going to trust that if my family needs a boot in the ass, then it'll be provided. And if my family needs wisdom to pull their head out of their ass, and that'll be provided. If my family needs an opportunity to get a job where they can work, that'll be provided. If somebody's driving down the road considering which house to break into, God will put the thought in their head, not this one. When the wife drives over the curb, God will keep that tire from busting down off the beam or whatever, you know. Whatever, you know, when my wife is sad because I'm not there and she needs a shoulder to cry on, God will provide a friend, a church member, just a prayerful evening with Him. God will provide. Okay, this is kingdom economy. This is not manipulation or anything else like that. This is just observing facts and evidence. Okay? So the fact of business and evidence is my entire life it has worked out. Okay? Now sometimes it takes longer than others. And but I'm here. So it worked out, right? So statistically speaking, 100% of the time since I was born, it's worked out. Right? So, I mean, it's going to work out until I die. You know what I mean? Until my spirit leaves this carcass and goes on to the next step, it's going to work out one way or another. All I need is food and clothes. Everything else just extra. So somebody stole a hitch off Dad's truck. Go tell him when it happened. And they didn't just take the one on there off, but they put a crappy one back in its place. He had like a stainless 10,000 pound, you know, it's a half-ton truck. I mean, it's way more than he. And the one that's on there is like 7,000 or whatever. So they stole his hitch and they put a different one back. He figured it out and he went and got the right one. Spent $70 to get it all lined out. And he's all mad and everything. I was like, oh yeah, they got you by the ball. You know, it's the trailer hitch and the ball. It'll come a trailer. I said, no shit, they got you by the balls, did they? And he was trying to be light-hearted about it. And I was like, well, so they stole your balls. Are you gonna have a terrible day and no balls, or are you gonna like get over it and just have lost balls? He's like, oh wait, got some more. I said, okay. So you got, you know, all these things stolen from you. I said, but think about this, Dad. You got Cheryl. You know, think about all that you've lost And compare that to what you do have. You know what I mean? I lost this, I lost that, I worked, it was hard. And now I have a knowledge of God. I have a great life. You know what I mean? What's that worth? What's that worth? You know, and in the grand scheme of things, oh, somebody stole my tractor or whatever. Oh, my toys, my stuff is gone. You know what I mean? And then like, there's also a promise that you'll get back 7 times what you lost. That's like a real kingdom economy deal. I can't outgive God, and every time they steal it, I get more blessings from God. You know what I mean? I've said it before. I'll say it again. With confidence, care, and compassion. Steal my shit. I don't. How much do I need to pack onto this camel? I'm trying to get through this eye of the needle over here. There's a story in the Bible. And it says something about to enter into the kingdom of heaven is like to a man trying to pass a camel through the eye of a needle. Okay, the eye of the needle, some say, was a passageway that was tight, but it's a reference to a sewing needle, obviously. And the passageway into some town somewhere, they call it the eye of the needle because if you had a bunch of stuff on your camel, allegedly, I don't know how accurate this is, but a lot of people say it. So allegedly, you'd have to take all your cargo off your caravan of camels and walk the camel through, pass the boxes through, load everything back up, you know what I mean, and keep on getting it, right? Going about your business. So on the one hand, the not in the Bible version is, you know, this passageway, blah, 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 which could be true, could be the enemy trying to take away from the gospel. The gospel, and it's in the Gospels, the parables told by Jesus in the Gospels. The gospel truth of it is, Jesus said, to enter into the kingdom of heaven, which he says the kingdom's right now. This ain't die and then all kind of whatever in the sweet by and by or whatever. You know what I mean? It gets all, you know, confusing. Jesus standing there telling the straight of it is quoted as saying, okay, directly before that, to the best of my recollection, this rich guy comes up and talks to him. He said, what must I do to enter into the kingdom of heaven? And he was a rich young man. And he said, well, you have to keep the commandments. And he said, I have. All my life. He says, okay, go sell your stuff, give the money to the poor, and come follow me. So it was an invitation to be one of the disciples. And it said he walked away sad. And then Jesus explained to the other disciples, he said it's easier for a camel to pass through the eye of the needle than for a rich man to enter into the kingdom of heaven. Okay? So this guy's riches and his esteem for his, you know, lands and possessions and everything, you know, and, you know, he was biblically rich. He's in the Bible called the rich man. So, you know, whatever that was at that time, he was significantly rich, obviously. You know what I mean? So it'd be real hard for, you know, like the Rockefellers of the world to give up their empire for some do-right. You know what I mean? The generational striving to be the champion of industry around the world. You know what I mean? You got Larry Fink. Is Larry Fink going to take his possessions and cash in all his chips, give that to the poor, and follow Jesus? And if he did, he would be very intelligent. If he did not, yeah. Okay, so if you got a sewing needle and you got this camel, you're trying to pass it through there, well, the camel's obviously like a hair of the camel would take some focus to get just one hair through there. I mean, like, we're gonna kill this camel and boil it down. You know what I mean? Get a little bitty funnel, have jar o' boiled camel passing through the eye of the needle. That would take a lot of time, heat, and pressure. What if that's the parable? I think that was a Holy Ghost moment right there. I've never said that out loud before. I've never had that thought before. There's the example right there. It just happened right here with us. That's an example of the 5-minute ministry. That's the type of thing that I would say standing at the coffee pot, random gas station, anywhere USA, right? That's what happens. Okay, so like how would I fix the click pass? If I took Jesus at his literal word, I want to take this camel down to bone broth, really break him down, grind these bones. Man, that took a long time. And then you look at discipleship, you know what I mean? You look at the joy of the Lord, and then the testing, the spelting, it says in the Bible, it says somewhere in there, I'd have to Google it to find out. I use that Google, I'll say, Google, where does the Bible say XYZ? But it says somewhere, some will enter into the kingdom of heaven as one who has passed through the flames. When I read that, I was thinking to myself, I was like, dang, I won't be in heaven looking like Freddy Krueger. And then, there's a whole bunch of get right, so how can I do this without being the guy that's all burned up? And it turns out that as I strive to keep the commandments, that will come with certain blessings and everything else like that, which the rich man did. But when confronted with lay all that stuff down and follow me, we don't know what Jesus would have said if this dude agreed to the process and went and sold everything. He could have just said, yes, Lord. Who do you want to buy it? You know what I mean? Why sell it, Lord? Why not? Come back like the woman at the well. She come back with, well, yeah, we may just be the dogs, but doesn't the dogs eat the scraps? And he's like, you've answered me well. Be ready with the answer. That's what I'm saying. Biblically speaking, the evidence that we see of Jesus walking around talking to everybody, the people that had a good answer had better results. And then I think Paul said, always be ready to give a reason for your faith. You know what I'm saying? That's why I like these talks like this right here. You know what I mean? And I'm trying to bless you, and I can't outgive God, so that opens the door. I'm in position to catch these blessings. I'm trying to catch these blessings. You know what I mean? I'm just not those kids. Let's have us a little intermission here. New Living Skimmer edition at 78,000 pounds. Today's talk's going to be a little bit heavy as we drive across Virginia at 78,000 pounds. No, I do not have a light shining on me. That's the stupid ELD that we're required to have electronic logbook device. And that's what that son of a bitch does. And there's a button to make it a little bit less bright, and then it'll just come back on by itself. Just random. And generally, about the time you go into a narrow construction zone, it's just like, bing, you light your eyes. Once your eyes adjust and you're doing your thing, it's not a thing. It's not bad. But bad if you're just used to, like, there's no traffic, it's 4 a.m., you know what I mean? You're sitting there, trying to stay awake, eat some they can measure how much cholesterol's showing up to try to fix it. So, you know, every time you see a burning house, there's a fire truck out front. If you didn't know no better, you'd be like, dang it, that red truck keeps lighting people's house on fire. No, it's there to put the fire out. That's what your cholesterol is. They'll say, oh, that's the good cholesterol, that's the bad cholesterol. It's like, no, that's the fire truck with a ladder. That's the other fire truck that is the pumper truck. And that little one over there, that's the one that will haul you to the hospital if you are burnt. They're all firefighters. They did not start the house on fire. They're actually trying to help. So stop taking this medicine. I mean, just like, anyway, so the capsaicin, you put it in your gum, it'll get into your bloodstream and it helps your cardiovascular. That is a forgotten process because Tabasco sauce packets are literally free at the gas station. Anyway, it's a help, you know what I mean, to stay awake because, you know, cardiovascular disease will kill you slow. Head-on collision with a tree, it'll kill you a lot faster. You know, so in our epic quest to not die and honor God with a healthy carcass. You know what I mean? Oh, I changed the oil in my truck because I do, you know, vehicle maintenance. So my vehicle maintenance is Tabasco sauce, hot coffee, don't wreck the vehicle. And then you gotta watch out for these guys. Like, why are you standing in the middle? Close off the whole thing. So you know I had to drive right here, right? And then you go out there and stand in the lane. Like, what is the deal? Slow down to 20 miles an hour in a 70 because this guy wants to get out there. If you're in road construction, stop shining the light in my eyes. If you know somebody that does road construction, explain to those people. You don't want the guy, the semi that's driving past you while you're standing in the middle of the road to be like blinded. I never understood that. Like if you're on a back road, a two-lane highway, and the guy coming at you's got his bright lights on, you're struggling to see. Chances are they can't see. That's why they turn their bright lights on. So why are you flashing your bright lights to blind the guy driving directly at you? So what you do instead, focus on the white line. So the car's coming at me, the lights are bright, I'm having a hard time seeing it. I look at the white line directly in front of me. I will naturally course correct towards what I'm looking at. Do not look at the bright light. Look at the line. In this case, they had blocked off the shoulder in the right lane, so I had to get in the left lane. And I see the guy out there sweeping, standing in the middle of the road. So I had to get over to the left. So just now, while I was driving through the construction, my eyes are focused on the yellow line. Because if I put my front tire on that line, I'm not driving off the bridge. Simultaneously, giving dude with the broom all the room I can possibly give him, but I'm not looking at the light. We find this extremely helpful. So we pass along the knowledge in the hopes that you don't die. Anyway, so I'm watching this guy, and he gets down on his knees to pray. He writes down in his journal, and he got on his knees to pray. And I thought, man, that's real good. You know what I mean? And then later, months and months later, with different, you know, reasonings, this guy goes on a journey of, you know, weight loss or whatever, you know what I mean? Even, you know, dude's not even fat. I don't think he's got really any problems. But then, like, you know, he's going to cut out this and cut out that, get rid of all the poisons of the earth. You know what I mean? All the seed oils and, you know, just you name it, all the way down the line. And then there's a more current. And, you know, I kind of bounce around. I do a lot. You know, they even call me Skip for no reason, right? So I'm tuning back in, and I'm looking at this guy, and I'm thinking to myself, man, this dude's starting to look like he's got a little malnutrition. You know what I mean? Because, yeah, I want to eat clean and everything else like that. Now, this is just me. This is just me. If we're, you know, looking at the situation and, you know, I see these special forces guys and everything, and the way they're talking and stuff, and they're like, well, if China tries to take Taiwan, the way that we'll know it really jumped off is the United States mainland power grid will go down. You know what I mean? And mess with us over here, so we're too busy to try to intervene with that situation, blah, blah, whatever. I don't know. When I thought about it, and then, you know, just like with that eye of the needle thing, I put some thought to it, like, okay, I'm China, here's the threats from the West, I want to take over Taiwan. Well, first of all, if I was China, the last thing I would do is tell you that I wanted to take over Taiwan if I really wanted to. I would not do that at all. I would tell you that I want to take over Taiwan. I would posture and everything like I'm building up and, ooh, gonna get you, Taiwan. But I would actually be building up to take over somewhere else. Okay? And then, from what I know of China, they call the United States the beautiful land. And they call their land the center of the earth, the central land, or whatever, right? And a lot of them come over here and convinced a lot of people over in South America and stuff, and the natives and stuff, they said, hey, you're really Chinese from way back when. That's why you're kind of squint-eyed, and like we are. And then, like, look at Genghis Khan, the way he rode the horse standing up, and the feudal system. And then look at the Native American Indians and how they were tribal and fighting amongst each other. Look at how the Chinese were tribal and fighting amongst each other. Then the Chinese seen how, you know, the white boys got the United States together, and that whole process. They've done that process to China. So now from Tibet all the way to the South China Sea is regionally controlled as about 5 to 7 states of China. Okay? And now they've centralized into, you know, what they got going on now. And they have focused their people on smaller rations so that they'll get fat. And then a lot of manufacturing and work and stuff like that. They switched over to a military economy and just pretended it was normal commerce, and then now they're like, oh yeah, we have all this capability because we want to take over Taiwan. No, that's not it at all. The leadership of the CCP was embarrassed because they talked all kind of crazy, and then one of our presidents 25, 30 years ago floated an aircraft carrier right in front of China, and they're like, do something, find out. You know what I mean? And we bullied them, and they didn't like it. And so they hatched a plan, blah, 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 whatever, you know. Plus, like, you know, the Russian communists infiltrated. So the Chinese and the Russian communists got together, infiltrated our school system, you know, find them where they're not type of deal back in the 70s. You know what I mean? And all this stuff built up. And then it's like, you know, they encouraged us to go, you know, Saddam Hussein tried to sell oil for gold, not US dollars. So, like, you know, we went over there and, you know, fought and everything like that. And then our government's like, the United States government says, how can we get rid of all these guys talking like Skip? They'll actually stand up so that we can have control. So that's why it looks like everything's geared to kill the American white heterosexual male. Because we'll think about the eye of the needle and be like, well, I guess I'm going to have to boil this camel down and get a really small funnel. Get this camel through the needle. Okay, it's a connection to God. That's what it is. And they are satanic. All they care about is stuff. They want all the camels. They don't think the eye of the needle is real or possible. And they sell their soul to the dark side. And now they're caught up in they ain't got no, they're just doing the best they can with their situation to whatever degree. And their situation is complete delusion. You know what I mean? They can't get enough. You know what I mean? They can have all the business and all the power, and then they need to be, this champion of the industry and all certain kind of stuff. They get consumed by it. And then they'll go through this crisis where like they're suicidal because they actually accomplished their goal. And what's next? And that's where you got these other, pervert conquests and stuff. It's because they want more and they want more. And what do? They attack the innocents. They attack the finances. They want to control all the food. They're just like, gimme, 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 gimme. Now, you can have a little bit, really, because I said so. So you better do what I say. And they get off on the power. It's disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. You know what I mean? And, I'm looking at this stuff like, I want God to have the power because He's sovereign. You know what I mean? I want all that type of power in the proper place, which is the hand of the Creator. Because I want that allows me to have a freedom from that delusional, psychotic darkness, right? And and that's all sin, right? The love of money is the root of all evil. Okay, so I hope that helps break that down or whatever. This is way long video and very deep. So I might have to start charging people. I'm about to put this on Patreon. Now, all this work, Paul was a tent maker. Every now and then, he got some support from churches. Like, I get some free Bibles. You know what I mean? Which it's the Word of God. It's the most valuable thing on earth. So I get all that for free, and I give it for free. And I make his channel giving this for free. You know what I'm saying? So, like, I'm laying up treasure in heaven. That's where my mind is. What's that? Like, I got my mind on my buddy and my buddy on my mind. I'll tell you what, there's no wonder that they persecute the African people that do the praise and worships again. You know what I mean? The praise and worship's what they're attacking. That's why it looks like they're they single them out and stuff like that and stuff. And then I thought this one time, God bless, I just keep going. I thought this one time, and I was like, what if the slave ships and stuff? Because like a lot of those slaves, I looked into it, right? Because I was like, there ain't no way there was a civil war over slavery. You know what I mean? It was really a war over control, and they were really fighting over taxes. The North was taxing the South more than the North. So the South was like, if we got to pay this tax, you got to pay this tax. They're like, no, we're taxing you. And then once the war jumped off, a great way to twist this is to say, oh, well, we freed the slaves. And they took the high road on this deal, which it was a major issue. And everybody knows it's evil, right? But nowadays, the modern slavery, the immigrant comes here, works for less than wages, no benefits, doesn't even have the concept of benefits, and all these companies take advantage, and the cheap farm labor, and then like the Democrats, they've always been the ones that were pro-slavery, and they'll get on there and they'll say, well, who's going to clean the toilet? Who's going to pick the berries? Who's going to pick the cotton? You see what I'm saying? It's the same thing. There's nothing new under the sun, right? And then I guess a more modern thing, they're calling it black fatigue, where they're tired of the black people calling everybody racist. Oh, well, you're racist or whatever. And then, of course, it's June, so, there's this whole, let me tell you about my perversion thing going on. And, I'm a bigot because I don't want to hear that shit, you know what I mean? Like, I watched the deal, and they're like, what if it was heterosexual month and we just made everything about us? It's like, well, why can't I go to the public park and expose my private parts? And they're like, get away from here, whatever. You just hear somebody off camera. The guy doesn't whip it out or nothing, but he's making fun of him. He's like, well, what if we just, do the exact same thing or whatever? You would be so offended or whatever. Oh man. It's like, why are you offended at seeing my private parts? You should be inclusive or whatever. I mean, just some kind of crazy shit. And I was looking through the comments. It's like, that's exactly what they do. Like, this is literally exactly what they do. And stuff like that and everything. So, I guess in the grand scheme of it, if you're gonna say I'm intolerant, yeah, of course I'm intolerant of sin. I'm supposed to be. Like, literally everybody on the planet is better off if we have the morals and ethics of Jesus Christ. Like, yeah, that's what I represent. And it's all because of evidence. So, and to be fully transparent, my daughter is a lesbian that's married to another woman. Well, they're, whatever you call it. I don't know how to say that in a way that is culturally appropriate. Like, that's as close as I can get, because, like, what time is it? It changes 6 times a day or whatever, you know what I mean? Anyway, and everybody ostracized me because I told her, I was like, don't do that, don't get married. You know what I mean? That's not righteous and everything. And she didn't say it, but everybody else was like, you're a bastard, you're a bad dad, blah, 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 and everything else like that. And then when I talked to her, I was like, I believe that Bible, right? And she's like, yeah. I was like, you realize I have a responsibility to tell you that sin is bad. And she's like, yeah. I was like, you realize I think this is sin? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, so if I told you it was okay, I would be a liar, right? She's like, Dad, I know you're going to tell me the truth. And I was like, who gives a shit what the fuck anybody else says about my relationship with my daughter? You know what I mean? She knows I'm going to tell her the truth, which she doesn't want to hear it. What good dad? You know what I mean? How could you call yourself a good parent and lie to your child? And be like, oh, it'll be all right, blah, blah, this and that, whatever. You know what I mean? Over, what? So you look good to the culture? I am not afraid of people. You know what I mean? What are they going to do that they haven't already done? You know what I mean? Anyways, the point of me bringing that up is that I'm a real person. I'm deeply flawed. You know what I'm saying? But I am rooted and grounded in love. You know what I mean? pretty sure that when I get in the position of grounding, my bended knee, humbling myself before the Creator, asking Him for wisdom and mercy and strength. You know what I mean? I know God's got a plan. I know God's got a plan. You know what I'm saying? Like when I even considered my daughter. I don't know how God's going to work it out, but He is. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not upset about it whatsoever. You know, could it be better? Yeah, everything could be better. Should I strive for everything to be better? Yeah. You know, a couple days ago, there was a situation and I made provision. And then today, when I knew that she was on her lunch break, I just sent a text message that said, hey. And I waited. And what's up? Came back. Bam. You know what I mean? What's the chances of getting somebody to call you back these days, right? I got a what's up almost immediately from my daughter. And I sent a GIF. I was like, you know you're awesome, right? Or whatever, you know what I mean? And it had like a little, you know, thing and, you know, lights up. Or don't forget that, you know, with a smiley face blinking at the bottom. It's like, it said, I think you're awesome. And it had some little squiggly, you know, looked like somebody colored something. I don't know why the art looks like a 4-year-old child. You know what I mean? Anyway, these two art looked good. It had class. That was just like junk. Anyway, I sent that, and I got 2 back. And I just sent a smiley face after that. And that was it. That was the whole interaction. You know what I mean? Because that's what a good dad does. I see my Father in heaven reaching out to me through a Huff Brothers pizza box. And I laughed and had a good day about it. 3 days later, I sent, small advertisement to my child. You know what I mean? It made her day. You know what I mean? Never breaking up. Reproduction. So, like, yeah, I mean, that would be weird. Even, I mean, it's like so unnecessary. Our whole culture right now is so wrapped up around anxiety. And I currently don't have that. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think I'm going to hell. Okay? I know that heaven and hell exist, and I know that I am not going. Because Jesus died for me. I can't earn it. I can't win it like some kind of prize. I can't lose it like some kind of, you know, we're not on the freaking Price is Right. I'm not guessing the price of Pop-Tarts and then spinning a wheel and hoping that, you know, Bob Barker doesn't try to spay or neuter me. Or, heaven forbid, be one of them girls that he was attacking. You know what I mean? God bless. Anyway, I don't know what Vladimir Putin's thinking right now. I said this deal with this guy. He rebuilds these cars and everything, and he'll say a song, or he'll just think of some random celebrity, and he'll be like, I wonder what, you know. So-and-so's doing. I was thinking about that with politics and stuff like that. And I'm just like, I made this statement earlier. Do not become emotionally attached to politicians. Do not become emotionally attached to celebrities. You know what I'm saying? Okay. And if somebody is actually in your life, it's okay. You know, Phil Robertson passed away. And I took it in stride. Probably a week later, I said something to my wife about it. You know what I mean? And we talked and everything. And we come to the conclusion rapidly, he did a good job. right? But that was the end of it. Like, I'm not going to get he's part of the kid folk and everything. I know where he went. So that's actually what we talked about and everything. And there was that awe moment. And then we prayed for his family. And we prayed for the people that he reached and the people that knew him and stuff like that and everything. And there is some emotional attachment because he is one that is being grafted into the kingdom of God from everything I know about the dude, right? So in that aspect, cool. I've seen Trump mention Jesus and everything. From that aspect, cool. I mean, like, if I see somebody that's bragging on a preacher, I'm like, have you got up there and tried to deliver a sermon? You know what I mean? So, if you're ragging on Donald Trump and the way he does stuff, I want you to go up there and try it. I want you to try it out. I want you to face 63 felony charges while you're running for office. And, yeah, like, damn. He didn't get in because of Biden and then all the crazy. And then he got in because everybody was tired of the crazy. Do you guys not realize that's a CIA operation to unify the country? Do you not realize the Pearl Harbor moment? You know what I mean? Do you not realize that China is the communism is actively working for Satan, trying to destroy the Church of God? Like that's really happening, okay? And then God in his wisdom is using these sufferings to bring us back into the fold. And then we're supposed to go out and harvest souls. That's what we're supposed to be doing. You know what I mean? And yeah, so get on it. That's why I'm like, go get them. Go get them. I'm like, literally, get off your ass. Go find somebody you don't know and discuss with them the Bible. And let the Holy Ghost be the words, you be the hands and feet. I mean, it's very important. And understanding, you know what I mean? Like, I was in jail, and this preacher man, one of the things about jail is all the solid preachers go there. They have differences of opinion and various knowledge and all kind of stuff. But, I mean, that's literally where my Bible came from, right? And I've showed it's a New King James Version. But I have showed that Bible. I don't know how many people they're like, this is an amazing translation. You know what I mean? And like you put my Bible next to other Bibles, and they are not the same. It is not the same. I'm telling you, it's not the same. When you have a calling on your life, like the video games and stuff like that, you have these. You come across some like enchanted item, right? And then there's stuff in the world where like my wife can pick up on it real good. Like we'll go to an estate sale and she'll get a bad vibe and she's like, nope. I'm like, that air compressor's $20. That's a $500 air compressor. And she's like, nope. And we leave. Because I know that she knows that stuff better than I do. You know what I mean? And she knows when it's got the bad juju. I don't even know where bad juju comes from. I might have to look that up. I don't know if that's an appropriate thing to say or not. But the shit's got bad juju, right? So, avoid that. And when you get something holy that's set apart to God in your life, that is not God. You know what I mean? So like your idol stuff, you know what I mean? So like, everything that you can buy with money, if you can buy it with money, it's not there was a guy in the Bible, there's a story in the Bible, might be the book of Acts, where there was a magician that tried to buy the Holy Ghost from the disciples. And it did not work out well for the dude. And there's another place in there where some lady had a demon, but she could tell the future. And they cast it out because they were tired of messing around or whatever. And then everybody that was making money off of that was like, hey man, y'all just ruined our gravy train, and they got upset. You know what I mean? It ended up, causing the disciples a bunch of hassle and stuff. I think that's where something about that no good deed goes unpunished. You know what I mean? Like telling people the truth, you'll run into defensive behavior. Okay, so a lot of our armor is when our kinfolk attack us. You know what I mean? And then if you're the black sheep of the family and your family's not helping you, you are literally sent apart from your family. The question is, why? So, are they actually trying to help you and you're spending all the money on cocaine? That's a you problem, not a them problem. Are they all in a cult? And now they've ostracized you because you're like, I think we should keep the Sabbath? And that's not a part of their religion. So they say, you are banished from our midst, excommunicated, because you have electricity or some kind of whatever. Well, you're set apart. You're rescued from the cult. You know what I mean? And there's like a cult, and then there's a cult. You know what I mean? And there ain't much difference. Like one of them's like an OCC, and then there's like A with a space, CULT. They sound real similar for a reason. They're real similar. And, that's just the truth about that deal. So, if you find yourself set apart, and it's difficult, welcome to the club, okay? Don't be discouraged by that at all. Just see it for what it is. You either need to stop doing cocaine, or you need to realize that you are outside of the cult now. The same is true regardless of situation. Read the Bible. Seek the creator of everything. Make the creator the most high of your life. Right? And then get a job, dude. And eat and get on your feet. You definitely want a job. You probably want 2 or 3 jobs, especially if you're the black sheep. Go get a job. Say, God help me get a job. Get that job. Say, God help me get another job. Get that job. And just work. And if you find yourself working all the time to rent a house, and all you do is show up and go to sleep there, wake up, take a shower, and go back to work 6 days a week, you're doing it right. That's what you're supposed to be doing. Let that process work for a decade, and just keep seeking God with Him at the head, at the forefront. Do not think that is bad. That is literally what disciples do. Okay, I'm not sure who needs to hear this. It seems like everybody forgot how hard it was in the 80s. Okay? So I worked all day long on a roof for a sandwich that had mold on the bread in a place to sleep that night. It was out of town, trying to make money to bring back to the family. And by the end of the week, things worked out. You know what I mean? And I stuck it out and everything like that. And by things worked out, I mean that I was gone for a week came back home and did not die, had food and clothes, and was able to shelter my family. That's it. Like, not buy a car, no freaking, no Lamborghini. You know what I mean? Paid rent on the apartment for my wife and children. That's it. We did not have a car. We walked. And I don't know if you've ever been to Oklahoma, but there's not public transportation. There was no such thing as Uber and all that other kind of stuff. Okay, so if you're hurt and you're like, oh, it's so bad, and Skip, you don't understand, and yada, 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 I'm telling you right now, I've been there and done that. And you just keep going. No matter what. Just keep going no matter what. I remember being on the roof of the house and say, but I was talking to God, but this is literally what I would say. Come on, Spine, just one more day. I don't know if you've ever carried shingles up a ladder all day long. I don't know if you've ever tore off a roof. I don't know if you've leaned over in the sun to nail shingles on a roof. I don't know if you've ever, been walking across a roof, the felt paper rip out from underneath you, and you slide and fall down 2 stories off of the top of someone's house. I don't know if you've experienced that. I have. Oh man, that guy just passed me going 100 right after the cop just pulled into the median and set up shop. And he's still just sitting there. The cop didn't see it. That dude just experienced grace. He's a mile ahead of me that fast. That dude could be on his way to jail for reckless driving right now. And the cop's not coming. So just that fast. Just that fast. You don't know how much God is molding you into a useful vessel when you're just like, come on, Spine, just one more day. But I drive around, and a lot of people say, oh, well, my back hurts after I sit in the chair. I can't drive for 7 hours and 22 minutes without stopping. Matter of fact, I need to stop because I can only drive 8 hours legally. Anyway, see, the Lord blessed me to look and see the time. Anyway. And then the other thing is, like, you don't want to take it too far. You know what I mean? Like, I want to acknowledge God in all things. But I don't want to get all hokey. You know what I mean? Don't be that guy and be like, oh, hey, how's it going? Oh, I'm blessed and highly favored. We're raised above, blah, 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 blah. And quote 7 scriptures and be all weird. You know what I mean? Like, just be yourself.